Good evening. We just went through a very emotional election in 2016, but tonight I want to talk about a very important election coming up, which is the midterm election of 2018. What is a midterm? Every time a president is voted for a term, after 2 years, there's a midterm election. And just briefly, our federal government has 3 branches. We have the legislative branch, which is Congress, which is the House of Representatives. This was working before. And the Senate. Okay, great. Go back. We have the executive branch, which is the president and vice president, and the Supreme Court, of course, which is the judicial branch. Okay. We're at a rare moment in history where one party is controlling the executive and legislative branch of the government. Of course, you know that the executive is Donald Trump of the Republican Party, and the legislative, which is Congress. Senate is 52% Republican, which means we have 52 Republican senators, 48 Democratic, if you include the 2 independents which side with the Democrats. And the House of Representatives is also majority Republican. I want to give you some interesting recent history, which is very significant. In 2012, Barack Obama was elected to his 2nd term as president. In that same year, the Democrats won a majority of 55 seats, including the 2 independents, which means there were 55 Democratic senators, 45 Republican. But when the president nominates someone for a federal judge or nominates somebody for an executive position, a supermajority of 60 votes is needed to approve that nomination. So you can see there's a problem here. They had 55 seats, and they needed 60 votes, and there's something called filibustering, which isn't in the scope of this speech, but resistance from the Republicans. So the Democrats in 2013 did something that they're perfectly allowed to do. They changed the law in the Senate, saying no longer do we need a supermajority to approve federal judges and presidential executive positions. The result was a simple majority was needed to bring the nomination to fruition. Okay? So with 55 seats, they had a majority, and they were able to solve a short-term solution problem. It was great for them in the short term. They were able to pass their nominees. Okay? There was only one exception. The Supreme Court, according to the law, to this very day, needs a supermajority of 60 votes to approve a Supreme Court justice. Okay? In the long term, what happened to this decision of the Democratic Party? In the Senate elections of 2014 and then again in 2016, the Democratic Party lost the majority to their dismay. And now the Senate is majority Republican. Also, as you know, the Democrats lost the White House. What was the consequence? The Republican majority took full advantage of this law, which they call the nuclear option, whereby only a simple majority is needed. And the Republican majority approved every one of the president's cabinet picks because they had the majority. But there's another development on the horizon. Donald Trump nominated Neil Gorsuch, I believe his name is, as the next Justice of the Supreme Court. And he sent an interesting message to the Republican majority. He said, go nuclear if you have to. In other words, do the same thing the Democrats did up here. Pass a law saying a simple majority will be needed to approve a Supreme Court justice. If that happens or not will be very interesting to see. So what's at stake in 2018? The balance of power can only be changed in 2018, the midterm elections. History is on the side of the Democratic Party. Why do I say that? Because the party of the incumbent president usually loses seats in the House of Representatives, and in the Senate. Almost always, you can do a little research of midterm elections, a few exceptions, but for the most part, they lose seats in the midterm elections. As far as the House of Representatives goes, it's unpredictable. Anything can happen. But the tendency is that the Democrats will gain a lot of the seats. All 435 seats are up for grabs. But what I want to focus on right now, the Senate is a very different situation. Let me show you the scene for 2018 and what's at stake, because the Senate is passing those laws. I said history is on the Democrat side, but in 2018, 33 seats in the Senate are up for re-election. Of those 33 seats, 25 of them are currently filled by Democratic senators. Only 8 are occupied by Republicans. On top of the 8 Republican seats, 6 are considered safe bets to maintain their seat. For example, nobody doubts that Ted Cruz will be reelected in Texas. He's up for reelection. So, just bear with me here. Of the 25 Democratic seats, only 12 are considered safe bets, which means 13 are up for grabs. So for there to be a shift in the balance of power, look at the task that the Democrats have. The huge challenge is to hang on to all 25 of their seats, win those 2 Republican seats that are up for grab, and pull off an upset in one of these 6 elections, taking a seat from the Republican Party. Quite a task. Conclusion. We are in times of huge change. Every citizen should research their candidates who will represent them in the House of Representatives. The 2 Georgia Senate seats are not up for re-election in 2018, but we will vote for the House of Representatives. No matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, research and vote your conscience. Okay? Because this midterm election of 2018 may very well be the most important election in modern history. Mr. Toastmaster. Lights, please.
I wanted to follow up on what you said about the Democrats, according to history, would be expected to gain a majority, or at least a lot of seats. Is that because typically it flops back and forth? It goes Republican and then Democrat?
Yeah. It usually flops when Ronald Reagan won in 1980. In 1982, he lost seats in the House, and I think he gained 1 senator. But that was an anomaly. Okay? And then in his second term, he lost in the House, he lost in the Senate. He lost seats. And then George Bush, in his term, he lost in the House, lost in the Senate. And then Bill Clinton lost very big in the House and Senate in his first term. Surprisingly, when he was right in the midst of his impeachment, he won some seats back. So, kind of unexplainable. And the only exception in modern history was George Bush Jr., George W. Bush. In his first term, he won in the House and won some Senate seats. But in his second term, he lost big time. Barack Obama lost in the House, lost in the Senate on both of his terms. So it's just history. Yes, Joe?
So the nuclear option has nothing to do with the president having his finger on the button?
That's a good question. No, it doesn't have anything to do with that. It just, I guess it's just blowing up business as usual, so to speak, so that instead of 60 votes to approve a nominee, only 51 votes will be needed. Okay, Ryan?
So those votes are controlled by the rules of the Senate?
Yes, the rules of the
And
Senate.
what's the process to change the rules of the Senate? Is it a supermajority vote or simple majority?
No, it's simple. Okay, for the Senate to change any vote, they just need a simple majority. So the senators, the 55 of them, got together in 2013 and said, hey, let's change the law, saying we don't need a supermajority, just a simple majority in order to approve federal judges, because filibustering was that thing where the parties, I kind of dream that will come to an end and people will vote for the good of the people, not just along party lines, which has gotten a little bit tiresome. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not an evaluator today, but I just want to give some comments. I think it's a very interesting topic and very educational actually for a person like I was not born in the United States, and I would like to hear these kind of things. That actually helps a little bit as well. So, and then besides you state, you don't state your political position, but you just state facts, which is, I think that's very good.
Yeah, you might have noticed that
Convey the message.
I didn't give my political position here.
Yes.
It was very nonpartisan, it's objective, and the conclusion is for you to meet. But to go back to, thank you for that, to Ryan's question, once they passed that law saying just a simple majority, once the Republicans became majority, they used the same law that the Democrats passed, because they can't say, oh, okay, we want to go back on it. They can only go back now if the Republican majority said, no, we want it back to the supermajority, which I doubt they'll do. Okay? Any other question? I think I'm out of time, so thank you very much.